Welcome back to another episode of Warren Cali. In this episode, I'm going to detail the story of NBA player Demar Derozan. Demar will be born on August 7, 1989 in Compton, California, to parents Frank and Diane Derozan. Demar's circumstances wouldn't be like most of his peers. He had a good home setting with two working parents who he both had a good relationship with. Demar's mom would name him the blessed one, with him not being expected to make it as a baby and them having a hard time to conceive. And that's the same thing with Compton. Many people wasn't expected to make it out of Compton, especially what was going on at the time. It was daily deaths and shootings going all over Compton. It was almost gangs in every area of the city, and for Demar, this would be tough. Demar would lose a lot of family and lose a lot of friends in his life. Before he was even born, he would lose an uncle named Lamar, so he would grow up seeing a lot of constant violence going on around him. Growing up on the east side of Compton, it was known as one of the toughest areas in the city. Demar faced a lot growing up. Demar grew up in the pocket hood Compton Crip's turf, one of Compton gangs that were heavily involved in killings, drug dealing, and all criminal activity. So Demar's daily life, this is what he's seen, and he experienced a lot. And a lot of Demar's family members were already Crips themselves. With that lifestyle around him, Demar seen a ton of people he knew, from family members and friends, died at an early age. At the age of 5, Demar's other uncle Kevin will be shot and killed by the Parus, and this will set up a trend of constant death and attending funerals in Demar's childhood. With his environment, Demar had to become a product of his area. With the streets being so territorial, he had to learn what streets to take, what areas to avoid, and how to protect himself. He became a pocket hood Compton Crip just off his affiliation to his neighborhood he lived in. Many people would start to call him Debo after a fight with a bully, ending with Demar beating another kid up for trying to punk him. Thick, with Demar being a force and a bully on the basketball court. Demar and his dad were super close, and his dad Frank took him to the park in the area to hoop all the time. Demar would develop a deep love for the game of basketball, with him being so good. Demar's hood wouldn't even allow him to participate in any crimes, and always had his back if anything happened. Entering high school, Demar wouldn't choose the notorious Dominguez High School that produced several basketball players like Tyson Chandler, Tayshaun Prince, Brandon Jennings, and several more, but instead, he went to a school he felt more comfortable at, where several Crips in his area went to, that being Compton High. In Demar's freshman year at Compton High, he would become a star and average 26 points and 8 rebounds per game. Put him on notice for everybody to know he was up next. He became so popular in the city. One time he was robbed by gunpoint, but several gang members let him go after they realized he was Debo from Compton High, one of the best hoopers in the city. Demar would even become one of the best hoopers in the whole entire nation, being ranked at number 3. This would help him get invited to several camps and help take his game to a whole nother level. He would even develop a relationship with rappers Master P and Romeo. With Romeo being a basketball player himself, they created an AAU team, which Demar would later join. Being with Romeo was an experience that Demar couldn't ever imagine, meeting other celebrities, going to parties, and going out to different cities. Even appearing in Romeo and Master P's movie, God's Gift, his last year of high school, wouldn't just be all glamour. Demar's father would suffer a stroke, and his mom would be diagnosed with lupus. Even his childhood friend would be killed at 17, so for a high school kid, Demar was going through a lot. Instead of attending colleges with elite basketball programs, he instead chose to stay home and attend USC with Romeo, who was also offered a scholarship with Demar Derozan. Demar would decide to go to USC to stay close to his family. At USC, Demar would become a dominant force, leading the team and looking elite among many players. In his 1 year at USC, Demar would get high praise, and many people would compare him to NBA player Vince Carter. Demar would enter the 2009 NBA draft after his 1 season at USC, stating he needed to take care of his family, and just so happenly, he would be drafted by the same team who drafted Vince Carter, the Toronto Raptors. Demar was selected with the 9th pick. Demar would take a few years to develop and later became a star on the Raptors, and with the help of point guard Kyle Lowry, they would become a deadly duo in the Eastern Conference. While in Toronto, Demar would make 4 All-Star teams and even 5 playoff appearances, giving the city of Toronto and the Raptors everything he had, but also being known for throwing up the sea for Crip many times throughout his career. But that wouldn't be enough for them, and they would trade him to the Spurs. Mentally, that would hurt Demar, where he gave in Toronto everything he had and being traded. But also, his dad was getting sicker by the day. He was facing his own battles in life and a lot of trauma. And the sickness of his father, Demar was entering depression, and to see Kawhi, the man he was traded for, win a championship the first season with the Raptors, after Demar tried so many years, this would deeply hurt him. Demar would play 3 seasons with the Spurs and take them to the playoffs once, but in his last season, Demar's dad would die. Demar would write an emotional post on Instagram to his father, letting him know how much he appreciated him. The next season, Demar would play for the Chicago Bulls, and he would have his best individual season ever, averaging 28 points a game, the highest he ever had. He seemed to find his motivation again, and playing for his dad was the biggest factor.
Posted on Twitter, the Kevin Gates line, depression has the best of me. Did you realize it was going to resonate with so many people?
No, I really didn't, to be honest with you. It was a actual feeling that I was feeling in that moment, and how I felt, like, and the only way in that moment I could express it was, relating with a song and the lyrics, and, I tweeted it. I woke up the next day, feeling good until I looked at my phone and realizing, what have I just started, and it kind of was a blessing in disguise, me doing it, because it opened me up and helped me realize so much for myself and so much empathy for the outside world of people just going through so much. And with that, it just put me in a position of understanding how to help not just myself, but others in the process.
I feel like
Demar would finally get the praise that he deserved, and many people would see he was an elite star. He still hasn't won a championship yet, but he's still working to that's his ultimate goal. He has overcame a lot from death and life tragedies. Demar overcame a lot and never gave up, but even went harder on every obstacle he wanted in his life and everything in his way. This will conclude this episode. If you haven't already, make sure you check out my previous episodes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.